It was 2017 and I was stationed at a dusty base in the middle of nowhere. Dry heat, rusty fences, and food that tasted like recycled cardboard. We were bored, and when a bunch of 19-year-old conscripts are bored, dumb things happen. Like this night. Our base had a pet goat. Technically, it belonged to the major. Big man, scary voice, and a love for weird animals. The goat's name was General Snowball. Nobody dared touch it. But every day we saw it, clean, brushed, well fed, while we ate mystery stew and wore boots with holes. So one night, after too much instant coffee and zero supervision, Private Malik said, "Let's steal the goat." At first, everyone laughed. Then the silence hit. That dangerous kind of silence where an idea goes from stupid to possible. So at 2 a.m., 5 of us geared up like it was a secret op. Balaclavas, black shirts. One guy even painted his face like Rambo using shoe polish. We looked ridiculous. Snowball was kept in a little shed near the officers' quarters, guarded only by a rusty latch and our own common sense, which we had absolutely none of that night. We broke in. The goat, chill. Too chill. Just stared at us like, about time. We grabbed a blanket, wrapped him like a fat burrito, and carried him back to our barracks like war heroes. For 10 whole minutes, everything was glorious. We fed him crackers, took selfies. Someone put a helmet on him. Then, Snowball took a massive dump. On Malik's bed, the smell hit like mustard gas. He started panicking, trying to wipe it with a sock. That made it worse. Goat panic is contagious, apparently, because Snowball started screaming. Like horror movie screaming. Lights turned on. Sergeant Velasquez walked in, saw a goat wearing a helmet, 5 sweaty idiots, and a brown war zone on Malik's bed. Silence. Then, he said, "Get it out." We rushed Snowball out the window, ran like hell, dumped him behind the motor pool, and tried to act normal. Except now we had a goat-shaped hole in our operation. Literally. At 7 a.m., the major screamed so loud birds flew off trees. He walked into morning inspection red in the face, holding a single goat turd in a Ziploc bag. He asked one question. Who touched Snowball? Nobody spoke. Then the major leaned in close to Malik and whispered, "He told me it was you." To this day, we don't know if the goat really ratted. Malik spent 3 days scrubbing latrines with a toothbrush, and Snowball, he got a private shed with a fan. Moral of the story? Don't steal a goat, especially if it's outranked you.
The night everything changed. The first time I saw true strength wasn't during a firefight. It wasn't when we were humping 80-pound packs through mountain passes. It wasn't even when we faced down the enemy. It was 2 a.m. in a forward operating base in Afghanistan, when Staff Sergeant Miller found Private Jennings sitting alone outside the barracks, silent tears streaming down his face. His brother back home had been in a car accident, critical condition, and there was nothing he could do from 7,000 miles away. What happened next defied everything popular culture tells us about how real men behave. What strength really looks like. Staff Sergeant Miller, all 6 feet 2 inches of him, with arms like tree trunks and a reputation for being the toughest SOB in the company, sat down next to Jennings. He didn't say "man up" or "soldiers don't cry." He simply put his arm around the young private's shoulders and said, "Tell me about your brother." For the next hour, they sat together under the Afghan stars. Miller listened as Jennings talked about growing up with his brother, about fishing trips and schoolyard fights, and the time they stole their dad's car for a joyride. Then Miller said something I'll never forget. "You know what makes a man? It's not how tough you are when things are good. It's what you do when everything falls apart. The brotherhood that television doesn't show." The next morning, Miller had arranged for Jennings to make a satellite call home. He'd shuffled duties so Jennings could have the space he needed. And most surprisingly, during morning formation, Miller stood before the platoon and said, "Jennings' brother is fighting for his life back home. We're his brothers now. That's what this is about." What mainstream media misses about military masculinity is this. Behind the tough exterior is a profound capacity for empathy. for brotherhood that transcends blood. Men who understand that true strength often looks like vulnerability shared among trusted comrades. Why this matters. In a world where men are often told to suppress emotion, to man up, the military paradoxically creates spaces where deeper connections form, where men learn that depending on each other isn't weakness, it's survival. This isn't the Hollywood version of military life. There are no lone wolves, no one-man armies. There's just the unbreakable bond between people who would lay down their lives for each other, not because they're fearless, but because they've learned that courage means being afraid and doing what needs to be done anyway. The silent understanding. 2 weeks later, Jennings got word that his brother had pulled through. The relief on his face was palpable. Miller gave him a single nod across the mess hall, a gesture that contained volumes between men who had shared something profound. That night in Afghanistan taught me something essential about masculinity that no book or movie ever had. Real strength isn't about never breaking. It's about knowing you have brothers who will help put you back together when you do. In the next article, the fear we never talk about confronting mortality on the battlefield. When Rodriguez joined our unit, he stuck out like a sore thumb. 5'7", wire thin, with thick glasses and an accent that betrayed his South Bronx upbringing. Bennett, our platoon's self-appointed alpha, smelled fresh meat immediately. "Look what the wind blew in," Bennett announced that first day in the barracks. "A librarian who took a wrong turn." The barracks erupted in laughter, and Rodriguez, unsure how to respond, simply tucked his head down and made his bunk in silence. What followed was 2 weeks of classic military hazing. Bennett hiding Rodriguez's gear, mocking his PT performance, and giving him the worst duties. Those of us who'd been around a while recognized the pattern. Bennett had been bullied himself when he first arrived, and now he was passing it down the line. An ugly tradition perpetuated by men who should have known better. The situation came to a head during a 15-mile march through punishing terrain. Rodriguez was struggling, his pack seemingly too heavy for his frame. Bennett, walking behind him, kept up a steady stream of commentary. "Pick up those feet, princess. My grandmother moves faster, and she's been dead for 5 years." I watched Rodriguez's shoulders tighten, his steps becoming mechanical. Something was building, and it wasn't going to be pretty. Then about mile 12, Rodriguez stumbled on loose rock and went down hard, face first into mud. His glasses flew off, and he lay there for a moment, the picture of defeat. Bennett stood over him, that familiar cruel grin spreading across his face. Well, looks like..." But before Bennett could finish his taunt, Rodriguez did something none of us expected. Still face down in the mud, his shoulders began to shake. At first we thought he was crying, until we heard it. Laughter. Deep, genuine, uncontrollable laughter. Rodriguez rolled over, his face plastered with mud, glasses nowhere to be found, and just kept laughing. "You should see your faces," he gasped between fits. "All of you, standing there, like I'm about to break." He sat up, wiping mud from his eyes. "My abuela would say I look like the creature from the Black Lagoon." His accent thickened as he impersonated his grandmother, wagging a mud-covered finger. "Mijo, what have you done to your uniform? Dios mío." The imitation was so spot on, so unexpected, that I found myself chuckling. Others joined in. Even Bennett's face twitched, fighting a smile. Rodriguez stood up, still laughing at himself. "Someone help me find my glasses before I mistake the lieutenant for a tree." Bennett was the one who found the glasses, surprisingly intact a few feet away. He handed them to Rodriguez without a word, but something had changed in his demeanor. That night in camp, when Rodriguez pulled out family photos to clean mud off them, Bennett asked about the people in the pictures. We learned that Rodriguez had been raised by his grandmother after losing both parents, that he'd worked 2 jobs to support her while finishing high school, that he joined the army to give her something to be proud of. She always said I was too skinny, Rodriguez admitted, but also too stubborn to know when I was beaten. Bennett nodded slowly. Sounds like my mom. A pause. I was a scrawny kid too. The dynamic shifted after that day. The bullying didn't stop immediately. That would be too neat a story. But it evolved. Instead of malicious barbs, Bennett's comments became more like the ribbing between friends. Rodriguez gave as good as he got, his quick wit earning respect. 2 months later, during a particularly grueling training exercise, it was Bennett who faltered, and it was Rodriguez who dropped back to help him, saying loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Come on, princess, my abuela moves faster than you." Bennett's laughter echoed through the trees. What I witnessed wasn't just the end of a bullying situation. It was a lesson in masculinity that many of us needed. Rodriguez showed more strength in laughing at himself than Bennett had shown in all his posturing. He disarmed cruelty with humor and humanity.